Let's work on question number 20 from chapter 19. So the question says, the following were collected for the master blend coffee production process. The data show the filling weights based on samples of 3-pound cans of coffee. Use the data to construct the X bar and R charts. And then what conclusions can be made about the quality of the production process? So here's the data that was given to us. We have 10 different samples. Each sample is in its own individual row. And then within each sample, we have 5 observations. So your N is going to be 5 because there's 5 observations in each sample, and K, your number of samples, will be 10. So the first chart that we can make is the X bar chart. So we have our formula there for the upper control limit and the lower control limit, where we need X bar bar plus and minus A2 R bar. Well, the first thing we can do is find X bar bar. X bar bar, that's the average of your X bars. So we need to find the X bars for each sample. So we have 10 different samples that we have in this table in the upper left. We need to average each of these samples. If we take the average or the mean of our first sample, we will get an X bar of 3.084. Now, we need to do that for each of the 10 samples. So, those are the X bars that you should get. Now, to find X bar bar, we need to take the mean of those means. So we need to average all of our X bars. So if we average all of the X bars in this problem, we will end up with an X bar bar of 3.0818. So now we can plug that into our formula. So at least we know our X bar bar now. Then we have A2 times R bar. Well, let's leave A2 for the very end. And let's calculate R bar now. So R bar is the mean of the ranges. So we need to find the ranges for each individual sample. So you can see that the range for this first sample is 0.06. How do we get that? We take the max minus the min of each sample. So the max in sample 1 is 3.11. The min is 3.05. So we subtract those two and we get a range of 0.06. We're going to do that for each of our 10 samples. So those should be your ranges that you find. Now, our formula here is calling for R bar. Well, to find R bar, we now need to take the average of all of our ranges. So if we average our 10 ranges that we found, the average range, or the R bar, will be 0.053. So now we can plug that into our formula. So we're getting closer and closer to having all of our numbers here. So the last piece is this A2. Well, for A2, we're going to need to look up in our chart. So we have this chart for factors for X bar and R charts. So the first thing we need to do is figure out what our N is. We said earlier that N is 5, so we will only be looking at the row for N equals 5. Now, which constant do we need? We need A2. So we're looking at that 0.577. So now we can plug that into our formula. And if we multiply 0.577 and 0.053, we get 0.0306. So now our upper control limit is adding those two numbers together, which will give you 3.112. And our lower control limit will be subtracting those two numbers, which will give you 3.051. So now we can work on an R chart. So we've already done some of the work to fill into this R chart formula. For the upper control limit, we need R bar times D4, and our lower control limit, we need R bar times D3. But we already know our R bar. We found that in the last part. The R bar in this problem is our 0.053, so we can plug those into our formulas. Now, D4 and D3, those are constants, so we're going to be looking at that same table that we found A2 in earlier. Our N is still 5, so we're still just looking at that row. And then we find D3 of 0 and D4 of 2.114. So now we plug those into our formulas. So our upper control limit will be 0.053 times 2.114, and our lower control limit will be 0.053 times 0. So upper control limit should be 0.1121, and the lower control limit should be 0. So now we have our X bar chart and our R chart figured out, and we have our data here of our X bars and our ranges. So we can figure out if these are in control or out of control. So let's first look at the X bar chart. So our upper control limit is 3.112. Our lower control limit is 3.051. We need to make sure that none of our X bars are higher than our upper control limit or lower than our lower control limit. So when we find the maximum X bar and the smallest X bar, we see that all of our X bars are within these two limits, which means it is in control. Now, looking over at the R chart, our upper control limit is 0.1121. Our lower control limit is 0. We need to make sure that all of these ranges are within those two limits. So the biggest range that we had was 0.10, and the smallest was 0.02. Once again, we are within those limits, so we are in control.